Welcome to the Unity 2.5 Project View tutorial. In this tutorial I'm going to be talking about the project view, which is the overview of all the assets that go into your project. For this I have loaded in the island demo, which I'm going to extend with a few objects to show you how the import pipeline works in Unity. So I have my project view here with the standard assets and the pro standard assets, which by default are part of a newly created project in Unity. In this folder, the island demo stuff folder, I have a lot of assets which go into the building of this particular scene. The project view folders here correspond to folders in your project, in your Windows or Mac file structure. In this case, I have this island demo folder, which contains the entire project, and inside here I have the assets folder, which corresponds kind of to the folders here in the project view. So now I'd like to add an object to the scene, so I'll quickly switch to 3D Studio Max, where I have this nice gas station sign, which I'd like to add to my Unity project. The gas sign itself is saved as a 3D Studio Max file somewhere else on my computer, and the textures that go on top of this model are saved in a folder I've saved in a directory called textures, put alongside the gas sign scene. Okay, so in order to import these files, this gas sign, into my Unity scene and project, what I'll do is I'll simply mark them both, copy them, and just drop them into my assets folder. Then I switch back into Unity, and immediately Unity starts importing these new objects. And quite quickly we have the objects inside the project ready to use. Now, in order for me to use the new objects, I'll just drag it from my project view to my scene view. And what I have now is a new instance of this object in my scene. And of course it also has the texture with it. Let me test this in the engine to see if it looks like it should. So if I double click my gas sign object in the project view, what will happen is that Unity will ask 3D Max to open a version of this object for me to work with. And here it is, opened in 3D Studio Max. So with the object here in 3D Studio Max, I'm going to do a bit of deformation. I'm not really happy with this part of the sign. I want this to be bigger and more obvious, so I'll just scale these and apply the change. Then I'll save my file and then switch back to Unity. And immediately, when returning to Unity, I can see the changes applied to my sign in the scene. Now, of course, I can also do changes to the texture that's on the object. Here in the inspector view, you can see the shader, and there you can see the texture that's used. If I click that, Unity will highlight it for me in the project view. And this I know is a Photoshop file. I can double click that and Unity will ask Photoshop to open the file. So, if I want to change something here, I can add a layer. And I can do some sort of green lines. Note, I'm not a graphic artist, this is just for illustrating the functions here. And I'll save my changes. And I'll switch back to Unity, and immediately we can see the changes applied to the texture on the object in the game scene. If I'm unhappy with these changes, I can of course go back to Photoshop and remove the layer, save the changes again, switch back to Unity, and the changes are gone. I can also customize the import settings for the objects. I can do this by choosing the object, scrolling down to the import settings. For this one, I'm going to instruct it to generate a collider, and I then apply the change. The object gets re-imported. A collision mesh is applied for each part of the object, and if I choose the object, you can see that I now have a mesh collider. I'm just going to make that a convex mesh. And I'm also going to add a rigid body to the object. And now when I play the scene, I can see that my object is colliding as it's supposed to do, and it's also affected by the physics system. And this concludes the Project View tutorial.